Am I? Who are you? Like, really? When you strip it all away, strip away the job title, strip away the role that you have at home, strip away the responsibilities, take all that away, just strip it away. Who am I? For a long time, I think in my 20s and my 30s, I think I was attracted to identities, and I think that's completely natural. I think it's a very human idea to want to be part of a group, of a tribe. And I think that's why something like branding, for example, can be so powerful. And to this day, brands matter to me, whether I'm conscious about it or not. And the things that I wear or don't wear, um, the things I eat, you know, the way in which things are packaged, like whether I want to admit it or not, these things matter. And I think for all of us as humans, we want to be part of a collective, and probably part of a collective that resonates with us in some way and who we identify ourselves with. And of course, in our 20s and 30s, for most of us, that's what we do, as in that's our place of work, that's the company that we work for. And if we're lucky enough, then we get to work for an organization and a brand and an identity and a tribe that we're proud of. And for me, I was very lucky. So, I began my working career as a fitness instructor, and I worked for Total Fitness. I'd applied to 30 different fitness instructor positions when I was 17. It was my dream job. And at the time, I had been working in a bar restaurant, um, which I did to get some money. But I was applying to all of these gyms in the area, and I applied to 30 different gyms, and I think a handful of them got back to me just with a generic response, just to say sorry, but no. And then I think maybe 2 months or so after I'd actually put in my application, the largest gym in the area got back in touch with me. I said, "Yeah, we'd like to invite you for an interview." And this gym was like not just the biggest in the area, it was the biggest in the UK, and I think it was one of the biggest in Europe. So this gym was 2 floors, and on the first floor, it had like a running track, a 400-meter running track that went round the gym. The place was huge. There was 12,000 members. Um, so little old me, who'd never worked in a gym before, suddenly got this opportunity with a huge brand, and I got the job. And it was a dream come true. It was brilliant. And I put on the uniform, and it was Total Fitness, and I had my name badge, and I got all my kit and things, and ah, I was on cloud nine. I absolutely loved it. There's no better feeling in the world. This was the job that I wanted to do, and I couldn't have dreamt of working for a better company at that time. But I remember saying to my dad, like, as I say, I was 17 at the time, but I remember saying to my dad, I felt like an imposter. I I remember saying to my dad, like, I I feel like a kid in a fitness instructor's uniform. You know, like I didn't really feel like I'd I'd earned it. I didn't really feel like I was a fitness instructor, but of course I was. And of course, I'd earned it. And I was in the right place and I was doing the right thing. And looking back now, I if I could talk to my 17-year-old self, I would say, like, you own that uniform. Like, that is yours, and you you own it and earn it every moment you're in it, and you should be very proud. And not for a moment should you feel like an imposter. But in fact, of course, I actually realized that imposter syndrome can be a really healthy way to feel. And slowly but surely, being a fitness instructor and being, a bit of a gym junkie, call me what you will, that became my identity, and I was kind of known within my social circles, within my family, within my business acquaintances as, that kind of the fitness guy, and that was great. I love that, because fitness is a really important thing to me. It always has been, and I think it was. I was very proud to be associated with that. And then that led me into personal training. That was kind of a natural evolution, and I became a personal trainer. Very much just an evolution of a fitness instructor. And so I carried on in the same industry, working with clients one to one. And again, I had my own uniform then. I was self-employed, but very much, I was branded. I was part of a PT brand. And I was part of a brand that I think was uh, common and recognizable. People knew that, around gyms in the UK, around the early 2000s, people with black t-shirts on were personal trainers. Um, so although, yes, I was working for myself, and in that instance, I had a unique identity, I was also very much, part of a brand, part of um, a tribe of personal trainers who had walked before me, and paved the path. And then I actually went to work for David Lloyd. And I went to work for David Lloyd because I loved their brand. And so I went from working for myself to working for a company again. And I love David Lloyd. David Lloyd were premium, but they still are. David Lloyd clubs are a premium health and fitness brand across Europe. They have the most expensive memberships um, in the industry, but they also have the best facilities in the industry. They have a different mentality. They consider themselves a club first and foremost, so much more so than just a gym, which is where, I'd always worked before then. And so, yeah, in my mid 20s, I began working for David Lloyd, and I was very proud. I went back into employment, but I earned less, but that didn't matter. It came with a membership and an identity of premium product, and that mattered to me. I was very much attracted to that, and that's definitely what I wanted to be part of. After that, I went to work in sport development, and I worked for the Amateur Boxing Association of England, who then became England Boxing, which they are still to this day. And so England Boxing is the national governing body of sport for boxing across the UK. And again, it was the identity and the brand and what that meant that attracted me. And so, you know, the ABA, as they were known as the association that essentially took care of spit and sawdust boxing gyms, the boxers and the coaches across England. And they had their own championships called the ABAs back in the day. I think they're now called England Elite Championships. But the ABAs essentially were kind of a really key, well regarded um, championship and tournament across England. They were the gold standard, if you will, of amateur boxing, and they would be a precursor to many young boxers who would then go on to the Olympics. And so when I worked for the ABA from 2011, we were the penultimate year before London 2012 Olympics. And so I was joining at an amazing time. I got to see those gold medalists win the ABAs, a season or two before. And then I got to watch them in their box offs to determine who would then be kind of sent to the qualifiers for the Olympics. So I saw them in the small hall shows in the leisure centres. And then before you know it, they were in the spotlight at London 2012 Olympics, on the biggest stage in the world for amateur boxing. And I was I was there for the journey, which was incredible. But I was very, very proud of that identity. I was very, very proud to work for the ABA. And then yeah, I think after the ABA, like I kind of came out of sport for development. I worked for some time with Kent County Council. Again, I was proud of their brand, their identity, that idea of being grassroots. And then I decided to take a bit of time and explore my own kind of opportunities and my own entrepreneurship. And that's where I began to feel a little bit lost, as I think many of us do. For so long, up until 2014, 2015, I'd been working for large organizations who had a good brand identity, had established values, and had a solid reputation. And essentially, I was standing with their badge on my chest, and therefore my identity was enveloped within their identity. Essentially, there was a transference. Just like if I was to quote somebody now, if I was to quote Barack Obama, for example, um, on this video right now, I would essentially transfer the values, the identity, the reputation of Barack Obama into my video. And I think that's something that many of us do subconsciously. We associate ourselves or what we do with other things that we aspire towards or want to be compared with. And so for the first time in 2014, 2015, I found myself without that identity to lean on. It was like someone had just pulled the rug from under my feet. And I didn't so much have an identity crisis because I think I was very confident in myself, I was very confident in my ability. But it was an unnerving time. As I'll discuss in other episodes, in other videos, I then actually decided to come back into employment for personal reasons. I needed the security, I needed the stability. And so I stepped back into David Lloyd, which was wonderful, and back into an identity that I knew, that I admired, that I respected. I then went on to do coding boot camp, switch careers from fitness and sport into software, and eventually managed to get myself a job with Deloitte. And funnily enough, it had been only a couple of years before when I had been training students in presentation skills that I had been quoting none other than the CEO of Deloitte. Deloitte were a company who I had admired from afar, from a distance. I admired their values, I admired their commitment to family. And again, I was incredibly proud to essentially wear the badge of Deloitte on my chest, say that I was part of that organization, to have an email address that ended in @deloitte.co.uk. These things in the moment, in the time, we probably think very little of. They're huge, they're massive. That association, that identity, because whether we like it or not, we're able to hide behind it. We can cling tightly to that identity in everything we do. There might be other areas of our life that aren't going very well, that we don't really feel fulfilled in. And so we just cling even tighter to this one thing that society tells us is real success. I could walk into any dinner party, whether that be with family friends, whether it be with business associates, a network, whether it be with my old mates, whatever. I could walk in and I could say, I'm working for Deloitte. Wow. Household name. Deloitte is a household name. It's one of the big four. No matter where I'd go, it would be impressive. Society says, James, that's impressive. And I could hide behind that. That was my identity. Oh, oh yeah, James. Oh yeah, he's working with Deloitte, isn't he? Is he? Oh yeah. Oh, good. He must be doing well then. I think for me, a really great test is that if you're in that position now, if you're in your 20s or your 30s, you've worked very hard to get yourself in a position whereby you have an identity that is strongly and tightly coupled with your work, your place of work, your role, your status. I think a really great exercise is just to imagine for a moment that all that was taken away. Imagine tomorrow morning you woke up and you didn't have any of that. You didn't have the job title. You didn't have the job. You didn't have the status. You didn't have the salary. You didn't have the email address that ends with the at and the identity, company, organization, whatever that may be, at the end of that email address. Imagine it was just your name at gmail.com and you had nothing else, just you. Who are you? Because that's what I had to ask myself. When I quit Deloitte and I woke up the next day, that first day of being unemployed, of no longer working for Deloitte, after I'd handed back my laptop, after I'd relinquished my email address, after I'd given back my key card, after I'd changed my LinkedIn title, I had to ask myself, who am I? Like, who really am I? I'm I'm James Cullen. JamesCullen at gmail.com. And that's a great test. And I would strongly recommend everybody in their 20s and 30s who are in that place now, just to imagine it. Just ask yourself the question and sit back and just sit with the answer. Who are you? Maybe you've got it. Maybe actually your identity is as a father, as a husband, as a boyfriend. Maybe you're a carer. Maybe you're the clown of your friendship group. Maybe you're the organizer of your friendship group. Maybe you're the scout leader or the football coach. Whatever that may be. Maybe actually you'd think, yeah, okay, well, I'd still have those things. I'd still have those identities. I think what's really important for all of us is to ground ourselves in a resilient identity, one that we can come back to. If everything else goes wrong, if for whatever reason the worst thing happens and all of it's taken away, and we're left with ourselves, then we can be confident in who we are. I work with people on a one-to-one basis to find out how they can go from identifying themselves really tightly with what they do and help them to loosen that grip so that they can then start to recognize who they are more so than what they do. And if you're interested in learning more about that, then please book in for a call with me. There's a link below in the description, and we can have a free consultation for 1 hour just to see whether or not we can find synergy and whether we can work together. And then after that, we can book in for one-to-one coaching calls, and together we can create a plan whereby you go from a tightly coupled identity to a loosely coupled identity, whereby you can explore other opportunities, all the while knowing exactly who you are.